The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Morrison and Associates as I gathered my things, already running late for the 6 p.m. meeting I'd been dreading all day. My first month as a junior architect at one of Seattle's most prestigious firms had been a whirlwind of learning curves, late nights, and the constant pressure to prove I belonged here. Maya Chen? A voice, smooth and controlled, cut through my anxious thoughts. I turned to find Victoria Morrison herself standing in the doorway of my cubicle. She was taller than I'd realized from our brief introduction on my first day, nearly 6 feet in her heels with sharp cheekbones, dark auburn hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail, and eyes the color of stormy seas. At 42, she was a legend in the architecture world, known for her innovative, sustainable designs and her exacting standards. "Ms. Morrison," I stammered, nearly dropping the portfolio I'd been clutching. "I was just heading to the Riverside Project meeting." "I know." She stepped closer, and I caught the subtle scent of her perfume, something expensive and understated, like cedarwood and rain. "I'm canceling it." My heart sank. Had I done something wrong? Was this at 30 days in and already being let go? She must have seen the panic on my face because her expression softened, just fractionally. "Not because of your work, Maya. Your revisions to the waterfront proposal were exceptional. I'm canceling it because I want to discuss something with you privately." "My office, now." The walk to her corner office felt like a mile. Victoria moved with the kind of confidence that came from years of being the smartest person in every room, her heels clicking purposefully against the polished concrete floors. I followed, my mind racing through every possible scenario. Her office was exactly what I'd expected: minimalist, sophisticated, with models of her award-winning buildings displayed like sculptures. The Seattle skyline stretched out behind her massive desk, the city lights beginning to flicker on as dusk settled over the sound. "Sit," she said, gesturing to one of the leather chairs facing her desk. She didn't sit herself, but instead moved to the window, her silhouette backlit by the fading daylight. "Do you know why I hired you, Maya?" "Because my portfolio showed potential?" I offered, my voice smaller than I'd intended. "I hire a lot of people with potential. I hired you because your senior thesis on adaptive reuse of industrial spaces showed not just technical skill, but vision, courage. You weren't afraid to challenge conventional thinking." She turned to face me, and the intensity of her gaze made my breath catch. "I need that courage now." She moved to her desk, pulling out a thick folder and sliding it across to me. "This is the Harrison Cultural Center project. $200 million, a landmark commission that could define Seattle's arts district for the next century. I've been working on the pitch for 6 months." I opened the folder, my architect's eye immediately drawn to the elegant renderings. The design was stunning, a bold integration of glass and reclaimed timber, spaces that seemed to breathe and flow. It was quintessentially Victoria, innovative yet grounded, daring yet purposeful. "It's beautiful," I breathed. "It's safe," she said, and there was something almost vulnerable in her admission. "I've been in this business for 20 years, Maya. I've won every award there is to win. And somewhere along the way, I started designing for approval rather than for truth." She came around the desk, perching on its edge, close enough now that I could see the faint lines around her eyes, the slight furrow in her brow. "I want you to help me redesign it. The presentation is in 3 weeks. I want to blow them away with something they've never seen before." "Me?" I couldn't keep the disbelief out of my voice. "Ms. Morrison, I've been here a month. There are senior associates who think like senior associates, who've been taught to color inside the lines." She leaned forward slightly. "I don't need someone who knows all the rules, Maya. I need someone who still remembers why we break them." The weight of what she was offering and risking settled over me. This could make my career. It could also destroy it if I failed. "When do we start?" I heard myself say, for the first time since I'd met her. Victoria Morrison smiled, a real smile that transformed her entire face. "We already have." The first week was brutal. We worked every evening after the rest of the office cleared out, the floor quiet except for the hum of our computers and the scratch of pencils on trace paper. Victoria had a way of working that was both methodical and instinctive. She'd spend hours on a single detail, then suddenly scrap everything and start fresh based on a feeling. "Architecture isn't just about space," she told me one night. Around 11, as we stood before a wall we'd covered with sketches and notes, It's about the emotional journey people take through that space. Every material choice, every angle of light, it all tells a story. I nodded, scribbling notes, but she caught my wrist gently. Stop writing. Feel it. Close your eyes. I'd hesitated, then obeyed. In the darkness, I became aware of the room around us, the cool air from the AC, the distant sound of traffic, the sense of Victoria standing close beside me. Imagine you're walking into the cultural center. Her voice was low, almost hypnotic. It's your first time. What do you want to feel? Wonder, I said without thinking. Like I'm discovering something secret and sacred. Yes. I could hear the smile in her voice. Now hold on to that feeling. Let it guide every decision. When I opened my eyes, she was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. You understand, she said softly. Not everyone does. The work consumed us. We debated material palettes over Thai takeout at midnight. We built and rebuilt scale models, our hands sometimes brushing as we reached for the same tool. We explored the proposed site at dawn, watching how the light changed, how people moved through the neighboring streets. And slowly, something began to shift between us. It started with small things. The way Victoria would bring me coffee without asking, having somehow memorized that I took it black with 1 sugar. The way she touched my shoulder briefly when she was pleased with something I'd done, her hand lingering just a moment longer each time. The way we both reached for our phones during the day to text each other ideas, often at the exact same moment. You're working late again, my roommate Jessica observed one night when I came home at 2 a.m. This is like the 10th night in a row. This boss of yours must be a real slave driver. It's not like that, I said too quickly. The project is important. And Victoria is... She's brilliant, Jess. Working with her, it's like... Oh no, Jessica said, her eyes widening. Maya, please tell me you're not falling for your boss. I'm not, we're just colleagues, it's professional. But even as I protested, I knew she'd hit on something I've been trying not to acknowledge. Because the truth was, I thought about Victoria constantly. The way she pushed her reading glasses up into her hair when she was concentrating. The rare, dazzling smile when we had a breakthrough. The way she'd sometimes stand so close I could feel the warmth of her body. Could count her heartbeats and the pulse of her throat. I was in trouble. The breakthrough came on a Friday night, 2 weeks into our collaboration. We'd been stuck for hours on the main atrium design, unable to crack the problem of creating an intimate feeling in a massive space. Victoria had been pacing, frustrated in a way I'd never seen her. Her usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up, hair escaping from its ponytail. She looked human, vulnerable, and absolutely captivating. It's not working. None of it is working. Maybe I was wrong about this whole thing. Maybe I've lost my edge. Maybe everyone's right and I should have stuck with the safe design. Stop, I said firmly, standing up from where I'd been hunched over my laptop. Victoria Morrison doesn't do safe and she doesn't give up. You taught me that the first night we worked together. She turned to me, something flickering in her eyes. Did I? You told me that architecture is about courage. About challenging conventional thinking. I moved to the wall where we'd pinned our initial sketches. We've been approaching this wrong. We're trying to make the space feel smaller, but what if that's not the answer? What do you mean? Wait, I said, an idea suddenly crystallizing with such force it took my breath away. I grabbed my sketchbook and started drawing rapidly, my hand barely keeping up with my thoughts. What if we don't fight the scale? What if we embrace it, but create what's essentially a building within a building? A series of interconnected pods that float within a larger structure. Each pod is intimate, human-scaled, but together they create this constellation of spaces that I looked up to find Victoria standing directly behind me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from her body. She was staring at the sketch, her eyes wide. Victoria? I'm sorry if I overstepped. Keep going, she breathed. Don't stop. What are you seeing? I turned back to the sketch, my heart pounding as I felt her leaning closer to look over my shoulder. The pods would be connected by these transparent walkways, almost like bridges between islands. People would feel sheltered in the pods, but still connected to the larger space. And we could use different materials for each pod to create distinct experiences. Wood for warmth, glass for openness, fabric for softness. And the negative space between them becomes as important as the structures themselves, Victoria added, her voice excited now. She reached past me to grab a red marker, her arm brushing mine as she began adding to my sketch. We could manipulate the height of the ceiling between pods to create these moments of compression and release. Like music, exactly. I was sketching furiously now, and she was right there with me, our hands sometimes tangling as we reached for the same pencil, neither of us caring. And lighting, we could use the pods to create different qualities of light throughout the space. This is it, she whispered, standing back to look at what we created. Maya, this is it. This is what we've been looking for. The next hours were a blur of excited creation, both of us building on each other's ideas in a way that felt almost magical. We sketched and modeled and debated, our creative energy feeding off each other until we transformed the entire concept into something neither of us could have achieved alone. Somewhere around midnight, I climbed up on a chair to pin a particularly large sketch to the top of our display wall. As I stretched to reach the corner, I felt Victoria's hands steady me at my waist. Careful, she murmured. I looked down at her. And something in the moment, the late hour, the creative high. The gentle pressure of her hands on my hips made me dizzy with more than just the height. Our eyes met and held. I've got you, she said softly. And I knew we weren't just talking about the chair anymore. I climbed down slowly and she didn't step back. We stood there, barely a breath apart, the sketches surrounding us like witnesses. Maya, she started. And I could see the war happening behind her eyes, want battling with should. Desire fighting professionalism. I know, I whispered, though I didn't know, not really. I just knew that if she stepped away now, something precious would slip through our fingers. By the time we finally stopped working, it was past 3 a.m. We stood in front of the wall of sketches, our new vision for the cultural center spread before us like a constellation. And I felt a surge of triumph unlike anything I'd experienced. We did it, I said, turning to Victoria with a grin. She was already looking at me, and the expression on her face made my smile falter. There was something raw in her eyes, something that made my heart start to race for reasons that had nothing to do with architecture. Her hair had come completely free of its ponytail, falling in waves around her shoulders. There was a smudge of charcoal on her cheekbone. She'd never looked more beautiful. Maya, she said, my name almost a question on her lips. She took a step closer. I could feel the magnetic pull between us, could see it reflected in the way her breathing had changed, the way she was looking at my mouth. She started. Her voice rough, her hand lifting as if to touch my face. My phone rang. Shrill in the quiet office. We both jumped, the moment shattering like glass. I fumbled for it, seeing Jessica's name on the screen, my hand shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. I should take this, I mumbled, stepping back, putting necessary distance between us. She might be worried she knows I'm here late, and, of course. Victoria's professional mask slammed back into place, so quickly it was like the vulnerable moment had never happened. She turned away, running a hand through her disheveled hair. It's late. You should go home. We can continue Monday. I answered the phone, barely hearing Jessica's worried questions about whether I needed a ride home. All I could see was Victoria's back as she gathered her things with mechanical precision, refusing to look at me. The drive home was a blur. My mind kept replaying the moment, the way she looked at me, the way my name had sounded on her lips. I'd almost kissed my boss. My boss had almost kissed me. Or had I imagined the whole thing? The intensity, the way she'd been about to touch my face, surely I hadn't made that up. Jessica was waiting up, curled on our couch with a cup of tea and concern written all over her face. She took one look at me as I walked in, disheveled, eyes bright with unshed tears. My whole body practically vibrating with suppressed emotion, and pulled me into the apartment. Okay, she said, settling me on the couch and putting a mug of tea in my trembling hands. Spill everything. And I did. I told her about the late nights, the creative collaboration that felt like magic, the way Victoria looked at me sometimes like I was something precious. I told her about the almost kiss, the moment that had shattered, the professional distance that had slammed down between us like a wall. Oh, honey, Jessica said when I finished, pulling me into a hug. You're in deep, aren't you? I nodded against her shoulder, finally letting the tears fall. What do I do, Jess? I can't stop thinking about her. And I know it's complicated and probably a terrible idea, but But you're falling in love with her, Jessica finished gently. I think I might already be there, I admitted. Is that crazy? It's only been 2 weeks. Sometimes that's all it takes. She pulled back, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. But Maya, you need to be careful. She's your boss. There's a power dynamic there that could get really messy. I know. Trust me, I know. I wiped at my eyes. Maybe I should request a transfer. Put some distance between us. Is that what you want? I thought about never working with Victoria again, never experiencing that creative synergy, never seeing her face light up when we had a breakthrough. The thought made my chest ache. No, I whispered. But I don't know if what I want matters here. The weekend was torture. I replayed that almost kiss 1,000 times, analyzing every micro-expression, every word. By Monday morning, I convinced myself I'd imagined the whole thing. That Victoria would pretend nothing had happened, and we'd go back to our professional relationship. I was half right that Victoria was already in her office when I arrived, and she called me in immediately. But instead of the warmth I'd grown accustomed to, she was all business cool, professional, distant. I've been reviewing our work, she said, not quite meeting my eyes. It's excellent. But I think we should bring in some of the senior associates to help refine the technical aspects. Thomas has experience with cultural centers, and Jennifer, of course, I said, trying to keep the hurt out of my voice. Whatever you think is best. The next few days were miserable. Victoria kept our interactions brief and professional, often with other people present. The intimacy we built over late-night working sessions evaporated, leaving me feeling off balance and confused. Had I done something wrong? Had I misread everything between us? She's probably just being professional. Jessica reasoned when I came home early for once, moping on our couch. Maya, she's your boss. Even if there are feelings there, and I'm not saying there are, she'd have to be careful. There's a power dynamic, company policies. I knew she was right, but it didn't make it hurt less. The Harrison presentation loomed closer, and the entire team kicked into high gear. I threw myself into the technical drawings, trying to lose myself in the precision of measurements and specifications. But I couldn't help watching Victoria during team meetings, noticing the shadows under her eyes that suggested she was sleeping as poorly as I was. Then, on a Wednesday evening, as most of the office was packing up to leave, I heard her voice from her office. Maya, could you stay for a moment? My heart leapt, then plummeted. This was it. She was going to tell me I was off the project, or worse, being let go entirely. I walked to her office on leaden feet. She was standing by the window again, her back to me, her posture rigid. Close the door, she said quietly. I did, my mouth dry. She didn't turn around. I owe you an apology. The way I've been treating you this past week, it was unprofessional. You deserved better. Victoria, please, let me finish. She finally turned to face me, and I was struck by how exhausted she looked, how unlike her usual controlled self. The truth is, I pulled back because I was scared. Because that night when we were working late, I wanted to— She stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. I wanted to cross a line that I had no business crossing. My pulse was thundering in my ears. What line? She gave a short, humorless laugh. Don't make me say it, Maya, you're brilliant. But you're not naive. I need to hear you say it, I said. Surprising myself with my boldness, Victoria closed her eyes briefly. And when she opened them, they were full of an ache I recognized because I felt it too. I have feelings for you that are completely inappropriate for an employer to have for an employee. I've tried to ignore them, to focus on the work, but— She shook her head. Every time you smile at something we've created together. Every time you challenge one of my ideas and make it better. Every time I catch the scent of your perfume, I'm lost. The confession hung in the air between us. I should say something, I thought. But my voice seemed to have abandoned me. So I'm sorry, Victoria continued, her voice steadier now. I'll keep things professional from now on. And after the Harrison presentation, I think it would be best if you moved to a different team. You're talented enough that any of our senior architects would be lucky to work with you. No, I said, the word coming out sharp and clear. She blinked. Maya, no, I repeated, taking a step toward her. You don't get to make this decision for both of us. You don't get to tell me how I feel. This is my company, I don't care. Another step. We were close now, close enough that I could see her pupils dilate, could see the rapid pulse at her throat. You want to know the truth? I think about you constantly. I dream about you. When I'm not with you, I'm counting the hours until I see you again. And that night I wanted you to kiss me so badly I thought I might die from it. Maya, she breathed, my name a warning and a prayer all at once. So yes, this is complicated. Yes, there's a power dynamic. Yes, we need to be careful and professional and smart about this. I closed the final distance between us. But don't you dare pull away from me because you're scared. Be scared with me. Figure this out with me. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then Victoria reached up, her hand trembling slightly as she cupped my face. This is such a bad idea, she whispered. Probably, I agreed. We could both get hurt. Definitely. I'm 20 years older than you. I can count. Victoria, the tiniest smile tugged at her lips. You're impossibly stubborn, you know that? I learned from the best. She leaned in slowly, giving me every opportunity to pull away. I didn't. When her lips finally met mine, it felt like coming home and jumping off a cliff all at once. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, testing. Then I slid my hands into her hair and something in both of us broke free. She kissed me like I was air and she'd been drowning. Her hands pulling me closer as mine tangled in her hair, scattering hairpins across her office floor. We stumbled backward until she was pressed against our desk and I was discovering that the cool, controlled Victoria Morrison came completely undone when you kissed the sensitive spot just below her ear. Maya, she gasped, her fingers digging into my hips. We can't, anyone could see. I pulled back just enough to meet her eyes, both of us breathing hard. Her lipstick was smudged, her hair disheveled, and she'd never looked more beautiful. Your place or mine? I asked. We took separate cars to her apartment in Queen Anne, a sleek modern space with views of the Space Needle that I barely registered as she pulled me through the door and kissed me again. We spent the night discovering each other, the taste of her skin, the sound she made. The way she'd murmur my name in the darkness like a secret. Afterward, we lay tangled together in her bed, the city lights casting shadows across the ceiling. Victoria traced lazy patterns on my shoulder, and I could practically hear her thinking. We need to talk about how to handle this, she said finally. At work, I know. I turned to face her, taking in her tousled hair, her face free of makeup, the vulnerability in her eyes. I don't want to hide this, but I also don't want to compromise your position or the firm. She smiled, pressing a kiss to my forehead. Smart and beautiful. How did I get so lucky? We talked through the night, making plans. We'd keep things strictly professional at the office until after the Harrison presentation. Then Victoria would speak with HR, ensure there were proper protocols in place. I'd move to a different project team to avoid any appearance of favoritism. We'd be transparent, ethical, careful, but we'd also be together. The next weeks were the most challenging and exhilarating of my life. At work, we maintained perfect professionalism, even as the rest of the team marveled at the chemistry in our collaborative work. Our design for the Harrison Cultural Center was bold and beautiful. A perfect synthesis of her experience and my fresh perspective at night. I discovered Victoria away from the office, the woman who sang off-key in the shower, who had a weakness for terrible reality TV, who looked at me sometimes like I'd hung the moon. We cooked dinners together in her kitchen, took long walks around Green Lake, stayed up late talking about everything from childhood dreams to architectural philosophy. I never thought I'd have this, she admitted one night, wrapped in my arms on our couch. I'd convinced myself that my work was enough, that relationships were a distraction I couldn't afford. And now? I asked, running my fingers through her hair. She turned to kiss me softly. Now I realize I was just waiting for the right person to make me want to rearrange my priorities. The morning of the Harrison presentation, I woke early in Victoria's bed, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. She was still asleep, one hand curled under her cheek, looking younger and more peaceful than she ever did at the office. I thought about how much had changed in 2 months. I'd come to Morrison and Associates hoping to learn from the best, to build my career. I never expected to fall in love. You're thinking too loud, Victoria murmured, her eyes still closed. She reached for me, pulling me close. Nervous about today? Terrified, I admitted. What if they hate it? What if we've been so caught up in our vision that we've lost perspective? She opened her eyes, brushing a strand of hair from my face. Then we'll have created something authentic and true to ourselves, and that's more valuable than any commission. But Maya? They're not going to hate it. We've created something extraordinary. She was right. The presentation was flawless. Victoria commanded the room with her usual confidence, but when she introduced me as her co-lead on the design, there was a warmth in her eyes that anyone paying attention might have questioned. We walked the committee through our vision, the building within a building concept. The way natural light would filter through the space. The integration of local materials and sustainable technologies, but more than the technical aspects. We conveyed the emotional journey, the sense of wonder and discovery we'd worked so hard to achieve. By the time we finished, the committee was leaning forward in their seats, asking engaged questions, their excitement palpable. We'll need to deliberate, the committee chair said. But I think I speak for everyone when I say this is exceptional work. We'll be in touch within the week. As we packed up our materials, I caught Victoria's eye. She gave me the tiniest smile and I knew we'd done it. The call came 3 days later. We'd won the commission. The office erupted in celebration, champagne flowing despite the early hour. As the firm's staff congratulated Victoria, I hung back, torn between joy at our success and the bittersweet knowledge that this meant the end of our official partnership. Maya Chen, Thomas, one of the senior associates, pulled me into a hug. This is your moment, too. I've been in this business 15 years and I've never seen a junior architect contribute at this level. You're going places. Later, after most people had drifted back to work, Victoria found me on the balcony overlooking the city. She stood close enough that our shoulders almost touched, both of us maintaining the careful distance we'd perfected. I spoke with a jar this morning, she said quietly. Before the call came. I wanted everything documented properly. My heart raced, and there's a moratorium on supervisor report relationships as expected. But given that you'd already be moving to Jennifer's team for your next project, and given that we'll document everything properly. She paused, turning to face me fully for the first time. There's no company rule against 2 employees at different levels dating. As long as I'm not your direct supervisor and we maintain professional boundaries at work, so we can go public, yes. A smile tugged at her lips. If that's what you want. Victoria Morrison, are you asking me to be your girlfriend? I suppose I am. She reached out, letting her fingers brush mine where no one could see. I know this won't be easy. People will talk. They'll say you're only successful because of me or that I'm having a midlife crisis. Your parents might not understand. My mother is definitely going to have opinions. I don't care, I said, meaning it completely. Let them talk. You might not feel that way when I turned to her, lowering my voice. Victoria, I love you. I'm in love with you. Have been probably since that first all-nighter when you taught me about emotional journeys through space. So yes, people will talk. Yes, it will be complicated. But I'd rather face complicated with you than easy with anyone else. Her eyes went wide. You love me? Of course I love you. How could I not? She blinked rapidly, and I realized with shock that she had tears in her eyes. I love you too, she whispered. So much it scares me sometimes. The next months were in education and navigating a high-profile relationship in a professional setting. Some people were supportive. Jennifer became an unexpected ally, as did several younger staff members who admired our courage. Others were less kind, whispering about favoritism and inappropriate conduct despite our careful adherence to every rule. Ignore them, Victoria said one evening, after I came home frustrated by pointed comments from a colleague. Let your work speak for itself. And it did. I threw myself into my next project, determined to prove that my contributions to the Harrison design had been merit-based. I worked longer hours, took on more responsibility, pushed myself harder than ever before. You're going to burn out, Victoria warned, watching me work at her dining table at midnight. Maya, you don't have anything to prove, don't I? I asked, not looking up from my sketches. Every day someone makes a comment about how I've slept my way to success, how I'm only here because of you. She crossed the room, gently but firmly closing my sketchbook. Look at me, I did, seeing the concern in her eyes. You are here because you're talented. Because you work harder than anyone I know. Because you have a gift for seeing spaces in ways others don't. She cupped my face in her hands. I didn't win that commission because I'm Victoria Morrison. We won it because our combined vision was better than anything either of us could have created alone. Don't let small-minded people make you forget that. She was right, of course. And gradually, as my own projects began to earn recognition, the whispers faded. I earned a promotion. Won a design award for a community center renovation. Proved again and again that I belonged at Morrison and Associates on my own merit. Through it all, Victoria was my anchor and my inspiration. She pushed me to be better, called me on my bullshit, celebrated my victories as if they were her own. We learned each other's rhythms, how to fight productively, when to give space, and when to push. We met each other's families. My parents were cautious at first, concerned about the age gap, but won over by Victoria's obvious devotion to me. Her mother was exactly the force of nature Victoria had warned me about. But even she couldn't hide her approval when she saw how happy we made each other. We traveled together, Tokyo to study contemporary architecture, Barcelona to see Gaudi's work, a quiet cabin in the San Juans when we just needed to escape. We adopted a dog, a ridiculous golden retriever mix named Frank Lloyd Wright who had no sense of personal space. We talked about the future, about the firm, about one day starting our own practice together. You're not afraid anymore, I observed one night about a year into our relationship. We were in bed, Frank snoring at our feet, rain pattering against the windows. Of what? Victoria asked, running her fingers through my hair. Of letting yourself have this. Have me have a life outside of work. She was quiet for a moment, considering. You know what's strange? I used to think that my work was my legacy, the only thing I'd leave behind. But now I realize that's only part of it. What we build together, not just buildings, but this life, this partnership, that's legacy too. Getting philosophical in your old age? I teased. She swatted my arm playfully. Respect your elders. Make me. She did. The Harrison Cultural Center broke ground on a crisp October morning, 18 months after that first late-night brainstorming session. Victoria and I stood side by side as the mayor gave a speech about vision and community, about how this building would serve Seattle for generations. We did this, I whispered to Victoria, watching the construction crews prepare for the first ceremonial dig. We did. She agreed, her hand finding mine despite the crowd around us. We'd long since stopped caring who saw. That evening, we hosted a celebration at a restaurant overlooking the water. The entire firm was there, along with clients, city officials, friends, and family. I was deep in conversation with my father and Thomas about sustainable building materials when I realized Victoria had disappeared. She stepped outside. Jessica said, appearing at my elbow with a knowing smile. You should probably go find her. I did, discovering her on the restaurant's waterfront terrace, the city lights reflected in the dark water. Needed some air? I asked, joining her at the railing. Needed a moment with you. She turned to me, and in the low light I could see that she was nervous, which was unlike her. Maya, there's something I want to ask you. Okay. She took my hands in hers. These past 2 years have been the best of my life. You've challenged me, inspired me, loved me in ways I didn't know I needed. You've made me braver, more open, more willing to take risks in my work and in my heart. My pulse was racing now because surely she wasn't. I know we said we'd take things slow. I know there are still people who think this relationship is scandalous. I know we're in different places in our lives and careers. She reached into her pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. But I also know that I want to spend every day for the rest of my life building things with you. Not just buildings, but a life, a family, a future. She opened the box, revealing a stunning ring of sapphire the color of her eyes, surrounded by small diamonds. Set in platinum. Maya Chen, will you marry me? I was crying, I realized, tears streaming down my face as I pulled her close. Yes, of course, yes. She slipped the ring on my finger with shaking hands, and then we were kissing, laughing, crying, holding each other as the Seattle night wrapped around us. From inside the restaurant, I heard cheering apparently. We'd had an audience, but I didn't care. I love you, I said against her lips. I love you so much. I love you too, she whispered back. My brilliant, stubborn, beautiful partner in all things. 6 months after the Harrison groundbreaking, I found myself standing in front of a lecture hall at the University of Washington. about to give my first guest lecture to architecture students. Victoria had encouraged me to accept the invitation, even though public speaking terrified me. You have important things to say, she told me over breakfast that morning, reaching across our kitchen table to squeeze my hand. And you're going to be brilliant. The lecture went better than I'd expected. I talked about the Harrison Project, about collaboration and creative courage, about finding your voice while learning from those who came before. During the Q&A, a young woman in the front raised her hand. How do you handle working with someone who's more experienced? Don't you ever feel like your ideas won't be taken seriously? I smiled, thinking of all the times Victoria had championed my vision, even when it challenged her own. The right mentor doesn't diminish your voice, they amplify it. They create space for you to grow while offering guidance. If you're working with someone who makes you feel small, find someone who makes you brave. After the lecture, Victoria was waiting outside the hall, leaning against the wall with that small smile I loved. How did I do? I asked, though I could already see the pride in her eyes. You were magnificent, she said, pulling me close for a quick kiss before remembering we were still on campus. Come on, I have a surprise for you. She drove us to a lot in the Central District, a neighborhood in the midst of revitalization. What are we doing here? I asked as we got out. Look around. What do you see? I studied the space, a corner lot, good light, close to transit. It's a great location, why? I put an offer on it, she said. For our new office. Chen Morrison Collaborative needs a home. My breath caught. We'd been talking about starting our own firm for months, but it had always felt distant, theoretical. Victoria, are you serious? Completely. I've been building Morrison and Associates for 20 years. It's time to build something new. Something ours. She turned to me, taking both my hands. Equal partners, Maya, in business and in life. What do you say? The process of starting Chen Morrison Collaborative was exhilarating and terrifying. We worked on the designs for our own office space, a 2-story building that would showcase our collaborative philosophy, open workspaces. Natural light, sustainable materials, spaces that encourage creativity. This is different from anything I've done, Victoria admitted one night as we pored over plans at our dining table. We'd moved in together 3 months earlier, and I still got a thrill every time I came home to her. Different how? I asked, looking up from my sketches. At Morrison and Associates, I made all the major decisions. Here, every choice is a conversation. A negotiation, she smiled. I like it. It's messy, it takes longer, but the results are better. You push me to take risks I wouldn't take alone. And you keep me grounded when I get too ambitious, I replied. We balance each other. We do, she agreed, reaching for my hand across the table. In all things. Our first project as Chen Morrison Collaborative was a community rec center in South Seattle, a modest commission that wouldn't make headlines but would serve a neighborhood that needed it. We worked with community members to understand their needs. Created flexible spaces that could accommodate everything from youth basketball to senior yoga classes. This is what it's about. Victoria said at the dedication ceremony, watching kids stream into the new building. Not awards or accolades, but creating spaces that make people's lives better. I squeezed her hand, proud of us, of what we were building together. Not everything was perfect. Starting a new firm meant long hours and financial stress. There were arguments about design direction, about which projects to pursue, about work-life balance. You're working too hard again, I told Victoria one evening, finding her still at the office at 10 p.m. for the third night in a row. I have to. We have deadlines. We also have staff who can handle some of this. You hired them for a reason. I pulled up a chair beside her. Victoria, you can't do everything yourself. That's the whole point of having a partner. She looked at me, exhaustion written in every line of her face. I know, I just old habits. I'm used to having to prove myself constantly, to work twice as hard to be taken seriously. You have nothing left to prove. You're Victoria Morrison. You've already made it. But now I'm Victoria Morrison Chen, she said, and I heard the vulnerability beneath the words. What if I can't live up to the hyphenated name? What if I let you down? I took her face in my hands. You can never let me down. We're in this together, remember? The successes and the failures. And right now, we're both going to fail at this work-life balance thing if we don't go home and get some sleep. She laughed, the tension breaking. You're right. As usual, I should get that in writing. We got married on a perfect June day in Maui, with the Pacific Ocean as our backdrop and the people we loved most as our witnesses. My parents were there, Victoria's mother, Jessica, as my maid of honor, Victoria's college roommate as hers. Even Frank had made the trip, wearing a ridiculous bow tie and behaving surprisingly well during the ceremony. I wore a simple white dress. Victoria wore ivory, and we both cried through our vows. I promise to always challenge you creatively, Victoria said, her voice shaking slightly, to push you to be your best self, and to never let you settle for anything less than extraordinary. I promise to build a life with you that's as beautiful and bold as any building we could design. I promise to remind you to take breaks, I said, getting a laugh from the assembled guests. To believe in yourself even when you doubt, and to love you through every messy, imperfect, beautiful moment of this life we're creating. You showed me what it means to be brave, and I promise to be brave with you. Always, when we kissed, our guests cheered, and Frank barked happily, and the photographer captured a moment of pure joy that we'd later frame for our office. The reception was a celebration of everything we were, a fusion of my Chinese heritage and her Irish roots. Architecture jokes in the speeches, dancing until our feet hurt. My father, who'd been initially skeptical of our age gap, pulled Victoria aside for a conversation I wasn't privy to. Later, she told me he'd said, "Thank you for making my daughter so happy." I was wrong to worry. What did you say? I asked. That I'd spend every day of my life trying to deserve her, Victoria replied, pulling me close. And that I was the lucky one. The years that followed brought changes. Chen Morrison Collaborative grew, taking on larger projects, winning awards, making a name for ourselves. We hired a talented team, including several graduates from my alma mater who brought fresh perspectives and energy. We bought the house in Ballard. Spent weekends fixing it up together, arguing good-naturedly about paint colors and landscaping. We created a home office where we could sketch together late into the night. Frank snoring under our drafting table. We traveled Tokyo to study contemporary architecture, Barcelona to see Gaudi's work in person, Italy for the food and the light in each other. We had adventures and quiet moments, passionate debates, and comfortable silences. We also faced challenges. There was a project that went badly, a client who tried to exploit our gender to negotiate lower fees. There were moments when the age gap felt real, Victoria dealing with health issues I didn't yet understand, me wanting to take risks she found reckless. There were arguments, some small and quickly resolved, others that kept us up late into the night working through our differences. But through it all, we had each other. Do you ever regret it? I asked one night, lying in our bed, the Seattle rain pattering against the windows. Taking the risk with me? Victoria rolled over to face me, her hair silver now at the temples, laugh lines deepening around her eyes. She'd never looked more beautiful to me. Never, she said firmly. Not for a single second. You're the best thing that ever happened to me, Maya Chen Morrison. Morrison Chen, I corrected with a smile. We really should have figured out the hyphenation before we got married. Too late now. We're stuck with each other. 5 years, then 7, then 10. Our firm flourished. We took on projects that mattered to us: affordable housing, community centers, schools, and underserved neighborhoods. We won awards, but more importantly, we created spaces that changed lives. The Harrison Cultural Center, now complete, became a Seattle landmark. We attended the opening gala together, watching people experience the space we dreamed into existence all those years ago. Remember when we couldn't figure out the atrium? I asked Victoria as we stood watching a young couple walk through one of our pod bridges, their faces full of wonder. I remember you saving the entire project with one brilliant sketch, Victoria replied. I remember falling in love with your mind before I even let myself acknowledge I was falling for your heart. Took you long enough to admit it. Some things are worth the wait. We mentored young architects, created internship programs, gave back to the profession that had given us so much. We fought for better building codes, more sustainable practices, more inclusive design processes. And through it all, we loved each other. What do you want our legacy to be? I asked Victoria one day as we worked on plans for a new children's hospital. She thought about it. Her pencil paused over the drawing. I used to think it would be the buildings, the awards, the acclaim. But now? She looked at me with those storm gray eyes I never stopped getting lost in. I think our legacy is showing people that you can have both a brilliant career and the epic love story. That you don't have to choose between professional success and personal happiness. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let someone in. Not bad for a woman who once told me she thought relationships were distractions. I teased. I was wrong about a lot of things, she admitted. But I was right about you. Right to take that chance. Right to trust that what we were building was worth the risk. I set down my own pencil and went to her, wrapping my arms around her from behind, resting my chin on her shoulder as I'd done 1,000 times before. Best collaboration of our lives? I murmured. 15 years after that first late-night working session, I stood in the office of our now thriving firm, looking at the wall where we displayed our projects. The Harrison Cultural Center, community centers, and schools. Innovative housing developments, even a small museum that was garnering international attention. But my favorite thing on the wall was a framed sketch, my very first idea for the Harrison Atrium. Rough and imperfect, with Victoria's notes scrawled in the margins and our coffee stains in the corners. Beneath it, a small plaque, where it all began. Victoria came up behind me, sliding her arms around my waist, fitting against me the way she always had. Sentimental, she teased. Always, I admitted. Especially about you. We stood there together, looking at the history we created, thinking about the future we'd build. There would be more projects, more challenges, more late nights and early mornings. There would be arguments and makeups, adventures and quiet moments, all the beautiful mess of a shared life. You know what I was thinking? Victoria said softly, "What's that?" We should take on an intern. Someone young, brilliant, hungry to learn. Give them the kind of chance you gave me all those years ago. You mean the chance you gave me, I corrected. The chance we gave each other, she amended. What do you say? Ready to pay it forward? I turned in her arms, looking at this woman who taught me about courage and creativity, who'd loved me through my growth, who'd built a life with me that exceeded my wildest dreams. With you? I said, I'm ready for anything. She kissed me then, soft and sweet and full of promise. Outside the windows, Seattle spread before us, full of spaces waiting to be transformed, lives waiting to be changed, stories waiting to be told. We'd build them all together because that's what we did. That's who we were, partners in architecture and in life. Building not just spaces but a legacy of love, creativity, and the courage to take risks on the things and the people that matter most. And it all started with a whisper in a quiet office. I need you. Not just for one night, but for forever.